Grease-stained hands tell stories of hard work and dedication at Miller's auto shop, where Jack Miller shoulders the weight of mounting bills and fading dreams. When a mud-covered Jeep rolls into his garage on a stormy night, he sees just another repair job. But beneath the vehicle's weathered exterior lies a mystery that will change his life forever. The woman behind the wheel carries more than just a broken timing belt. She carries a secret that could shake the foundations of modern society. What starts as a simple repair becomes an extraordinary journey that proves sometimes the most valuable fixes aren't the ones made with wrenches and tools. Could a chance encounter in a small-town garage reveal truths that could change everything we think we know about wealth, connection, and human nature? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning sun filtered through the grimy windows of Miller's auto shop, casting long shadows across the concrete floor. Jack Miller's calloused fingers traced the edges of yet another overdue notice, adding it to the growing stack of bills beneath his father's old desk calendar. 5 generations of Millers had kept their books at this same scarred oak desk, though none had faced quite the challenges he did now. "Morning, boss." Mike Chen's cheerful voice cut through Jack's brooding. The 23-year-old apprentice mechanic bounced through the door, carrying 2 cups of coffee from the diner across the street. "Sarah says you forgot breakfast again." Jack accepted the coffee with a grateful nod, savoring the familiar aroma. Sarah Martinez had been watching out for him since high school, first as his chemistry lab partner and now as his front desk manager. Between her organizational skills and Mike's enthusiasm, they were the only reason the shop stayed afloat these days. "Got the Anderson pickup ready for pickup?" Jack asked, deliberately ignoring the bills. "All set. New brake lines, full fluid flush, and I even fixed that squeak in the driver's side door." Mike's pride was evident. "Mr. Anderson's gonna be happy." Jack smiled, remembering his own early days learning under his father's watchful eye. The old man had always said a mechanic's reputation was built on the little things, the squeaks, fixed without charging, the extra time spent tracking down that mysterious rattle. "Dad would have liked you, Mike," Jack said quietly, more to himself than his apprentice. "He always said the best mechanics listen to cars with their hearts as much as their ears." The morning light caught a framed photograph on the wall. Jack's father standing proudly in front of the shop on opening day, 1975. Back then, Riverside was a bustling manufacturing town. The auto plant employed half the county, and Miller's auto shop had more work than they could handle. Now the plant was gone, replaced by an empty lot and broken promises of redevelopment. The town's population had dwindled, and those who remained struggled to keep their businesses alive. Yet something in Jack refused to give up, refused to be the Miller who let the legacy die. Sarah's voice crackled over the ancient intercom. "Jack, got Mrs. Peterson here about her Subaru. Be right there." He drained his coffee, straightened his shoulders, and headed to the front office. Mrs. Peterson, a retired schoolteacher who'd taught Jack in 3rd grade, sat in one of the worn waiting room chairs. Her worried expression softened at the sight of him. "Jack, dear, I hate to be a bother, but that noise is back." "No bother at all, Mrs. P. Let's take a look." As he popped the hood of her aging Subaru, Jack's mind drifted to the stack of bills in his office. Mrs. Peterson lived on a fixed income. He'd have to find a way to fix the problem without breaking her budget. It was what his father would have done. The morning slipped into afternoon as Jack moved from car to car. A timing belt here, a transmission flush there, each repair a small victory against entropy and economics. Mike worked alongside him, absorbing knowledge like a sponge, while Sarah kept the paperwork flowing and the customers happy. Around 2, Sarah appeared in the garage doorway, concern etched on her face. "Jack, the bank called again." He wiped his hands on a shop rag, leaving fresh grease stains atop old ones. "What did they say?" 3 months. "If we can't get current by then." She didn't need to finish the sentence. Jack nodded, his jaw tight. 3 months to save 5 generations of history. 3 months to prove that hard work and integrity still meant something in a world that seemed to value neither. The afternoon sun slanted through the garage doors as Jack worked on Mrs. Peterson's Subaru, discovering that the mysterious noise was a failing CV joint. As he replaced it, his father's voice echoed in his memory. "Every car has a story, son. Every repair is a chapter in that story. Make sure you're adding good chapters." By closing time, the day's work was done, but the weight of uncertainty remained. Jack stood in the gathering dusk, looking at the shop that had been his whole world for as long as he could remember. The faded sign, the worn tools, the memories embedded in every corner. It was more than just a business. It was his heritage, his responsibility, his home. Thunder rumbled in the distance as he locked up, promising a storm to match his mood. He had no way of knowing that the approaching tempest would bring more than just rain. It would bring a mud-covered Jeep and a chance encounter that would change everything. The storm hit just as Jack was finishing up the paperwork on Mrs. Peterson's Subaru. Rain hammered against the shop's metal roof, drowning out the classic rock. Playing softly on the old radio. He'd sent Mike and Sarah home early. No sense keeping them around when the weather would keep customers away. The sound of an engine struggling cut through the downpour. Jack looked up from his desk to see headlights swinging into the lot, illuminating sheets of rain. A mud-covered Jeep Grand Cherokee limped toward the garage, its engine making the distinctive sound of a timing belt ready to give up the ghost. Without hesitation, Jack hit the garage door opener and grabbed his raincoat. The Jeep's driver managed to get the vehicle inside just as a flash of lightning split the sky. The driver's door opened and a woman emerged, mid-30s, wearing hiking boots and cargo pants that had seen better days. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and despite the vehicle's condition, she carried herself with a quiet confidence that caught Jack's attention. "Timing belt?" he asked, already moving toward the hood. She nodded, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "You can tell just from the sound? 25 years of listening to engines talk." Jack popped the hood, revealing a well-maintained but thoroughly mud-splattered engine compartment. "I'm Jack Miller, Elena." "Santos," she replied, watching as he examined the engine with practiced efficiency. "I was hoping to make it to the next town, but your shop was the first sign of life I've seen in miles." There was something about her voice, a careful neutrality that suggested she was used to moderating her speech. Jack noticed she held what looked like a high-end phone, though she wasn't using it to make calls or check social media like most stranded motorists. "You're lucky you stopped when you did," he said, pointing to the fraying timing belt. "Another few miles and this would have snapped, probably taking your engine with it." Eleanor moved closer, showing surprising interest in the mechanical details. "Can you fix it tonight?" Jack checked his watch. "Nearly 8 p.m. I've got the parts, but it'll take a few hours. There's a decent motel about 3 blocks down, or I can have it ready first thing in the morning." She seemed to consider this, her eyes taking in the shop's organized chaos. Jack noticed she paid particular attention to the family photos on the wall, the worn but well-maintained tools, the small details that told the story of a business built on dedication rather than profit. "I'd prefer to wait, if that's all right," she said finally. "I'm happy to pay after-hours rates." Something in her tone suggested money wasn't a concern, though nothing in her appearance or demeanor screamed wealth. Jack found himself intrigued, despite his usual professional detachment. "Your call," he said, already reaching for his tools. "Mind if I ask what got your Jeep so thoroughly acquainted with the local mud?" Elena's laugh was genuine, if slightly guarded. "I've been documenting the effects of the manufacturing exodus on small towns in the region. Some of the access roads aren't exactly well maintained." "Documenting?" Jack raised an eyebrow as he began removing components to access the timing belt. I'm working on a project about American industrial decline and its impact on communities. She held up her phone, which Jack now realized was actually a sophisticated camera disguised as a mobile device. Sometimes the best stories are found off the beaten path. Jack thought about the stack of bills in his office, about the empty storefronts downtown, about Mike's boundless optimism in the face of dwindling opportunities. You've certainly come to the right place for that story. As he worked, Elena moved around the shop, seemingly casual in her observation but missing nothing. She asked thoughtful questions about the business, the town, the changes he'd seen. Jack found himself opening up more than usual, something about her genuine interest, breaking through his habitual reserve. "This timing belt's actually in better shape than I expected," he commented as he worked. "You take good care of this vehicle." "I believe in maintaining what matters," Eleanor replied, her eyes meeting his with unexpected intensity. "Some things are worth the investment of time and care." Thunder rolled outside, but within the shop a different kind of energy was building. A connection formed over shared values and unspoken understanding. Neither of them could know yet how this chance encounter would ripple outward, changing not just their lives, but an entire community's future. Jack worked steadily, his hands moving with the sure confidence of someone who had found their true calling. Elena watched, her camera occasionally capturing moments she thought no one noticed, each frame adding to a story that was becoming far more interesting than she'd anticipated. The rain continued its steady drumbeat on the roof as Jack worked, his movements precise and methodical. Elena had settled into one of the waiting room chairs she'd pulled into the garage, her camera phone resting casually in her lap. Every so often, she'd adjust its position slightly, capturing the play of shadow and light across the tools and machinery. "You know," Jack said, glancing up from the engine, "most people spend their waiting time playing games on their phones or complaining about the delay." Elena's lips curved in a small smile. "I'm not most people. I'm getting that impression." He paused, studying a peculiar modification to the Jeep's engine. "This is custom work, high-end stuff, not something you'd expect to find in a vehicle that's been through backroads and mud." A flicker of something, concern, amusement, crossed Elena's face. "Sometimes appearances can be deceiving." Jack's hands stilled on the wrench, like a sophisticated camera disguised as a phone. This time, Elena's smile held a hint of respect. "You noticed. I fix things for a living. Noticing details is part of the job." He resumed working, but his tone remained conversational. "Just like I noticed that despite the mud, this Jeep has some very specific modifications. The kind that suggest it's not just for casual off-roading." Elena stood, moving closer to the engine. "What else do you notice?" "The suspension's been custom-tuned. The electrical system's been upgraded far beyond standard specs, and unless I'm mistaken, that's a satellite communication system cleverly hidden in what looks like a normal antenna mount." He met her eyes. "This is a purpose-built vehicle disguised as an ordinary Jeep, kind of like you're a purpose-built journalist disguised as a casual documentarian." For a long moment, Elena said nothing. The rain filled the silence between them, punctuated by distant thunder. Finally, she reached into her pocket and extracted a small memory card from her camera. "Would you like to see what I've been documenting?" Jack wiped his hands on a shop rag. "I get the feeling this is about more than just industrial decline. Everything's connected," Elena said, moving to a workbench where her laptop sat. "The decline of American manufacturing, the erosion of small-town life, the growing divide between those who make things and those who make money from things being made." She inserted the memory card. "Sometimes the best way to understand a problem is to look at it from ground level." The laptop screen came to life, displaying a series of images: abandoned factories, empty storefronts, but also moments of resilience. Small business owners opening their shops, community gatherings, people helping people. Jack recognized some of the locations from neighboring towns. "These are beautiful," he said softly, but they're more than just documentation, aren't they? Elena's fingers traced the edge of her laptop. I believe stories have power. The right story, told the right way, can change minds. Maybe even change lives. And what's the story you're really trying to tell? She turned to face him fully. That's what I'm here to find out. But I think I just found an important chapter of it. Jack raised an eyebrow questioningly. 5 generations of the same family, maintaining not just vehicles, but trust, community, values. Elena gestured around the shop. While everything else changes, some things remain constant. That's worth documenting, worth preserving. If we can keep the doors open, Jack said, more to himself than to her. Elena's expression sharpened with interest. Are things that difficult? Jack hesitated, then decided on honesty. Let's just say the timing belt isn't the only thing around here at risk of snapping under pressure. Before Elena could respond, headlights swept across the garage entrance. A police cruiser pulled up, and Officer Tom Bradley stepped out, shaking off the rain. Saw the lights on, Jack. Everything okay? His eyes moved to Elena, professional assessment mixing with small-town curiosity. Just finishing up some emergency repairs, Tom. Elena here got caught in the storm. Tom nodded, but Jack noticed how his gaze lingered on the mud-covered Jeep, the sophisticated camera equipment, the laptop displaying images of the region. Small towns had long memories, and strangers asking questions about local troubles didn't always receive warm welcomes. Well, don't stay too late, Tom said finally. Storm's supposed to get worse before it gets better. After he left, Eleanor closed her laptop with deliberate care. Small towns. Everyone watches out for everyone else. Most of the time that's a good thing, Jack replied, returning to the Jeep. But sometimes it means change is harder. People get set in their ways, resist anything new or different, even if that change might help. Jack's hands moved surely over the engine components. Especially then. Nobody likes admitting they need help, that the old ways might not be enough anymore. Elena watched him work in silence for a moment. And what about you, Jack Miller? Are you set in your ways? The question hung in the air between them, weighted with possibilities neither of them was ready to fully acknowledge. Jack's hands stilled on the wrench as he considered Elena's question about being set in his ways. Instead of answering directly, he straightened up and walked to an old filing cabinet in the corner. Let me show you something, he said, pulling out a worn leather album. The cover bore a simple inscription, Miller's Auto Shop. Every car tells a story. Eleanor moved closer as Jack set the album on a clean workbench. The first page showed a black-and-white photograph of a young man standing proudly beside a 1940s. A Ford, my grandfather, Jack explained, his voice soft with memory. He started documenting every significant repair that came through the shop. Said each car was a chapter in the town's history. He turned the pages carefully. Photographs spanning decades told the story of not just vehicles, but the community they served. A school bus that had carried 3 generations of local children. The police chief's cruiser from 1973. A restored Mustang that had been a local teenager's pride and joy. Look at this one, Jack said, pointing to a photo from the late 1980s. A group of auto plant workers stood around their vehicles, all bearing Miller's Auto Shop stickers. Back when the plant was running, we serviced half the workers' cars. They'd come in before their shifts, share coffee, talk about their families. Elena studied the images intently, her fingers hovering over the carefully preserved photographs. You're not just maintaining vehicles, she said slowly. You're preserving memories. Dad used to say that every dent had a story, every repair was a connection. Jack turned another page, revealing more recent photographs. These days, most people treat cars like disposable appliances. They don't understand the history, the craftsmanship, but you do, Elena said, her eyes meeting his. That's why you're still here, isn't it? It's not just about fixing cars. Jack nodded, surprised by how well she understood. This shop, it's like a living museum of the town's history. Every vehicle that comes through those doors brings its own story, adds to the larger narrative. Elena's hand moved to her camera, then stopped. "May I?" Jack gestured permission, and she began photographing the album's pages, treating each image with the same respect he did. "You know," she said as she worked, "I've visited dozens of small towns for this project. Everyone talks about what's been lost, jobs, opportunities, hope. But here, you're maintaining something more than just machines." "We try," Jack admitted, "but it's getting harder. People move away, shops close, the stories start to fade." Eleanor lowered her camera, her expression thoughtful. "Maybe that's why documenting them is so important, not just to preserve the past, but to understand how we got here. And maybe," she paused, choosing her words carefully, "maybe to find a way forward that doesn't lose what matters." Thunder crashed outside, closer now, making them both jump. Jack glanced at the Jeep's engine, remembering the task at hand. "Speaking of moving forward," he said, returning to work, "tell me about your project. Real version this time." Elena leaned against the workbench, watching him work. "It started as a traditional documentary about industrial decline. But the more towns I visited, the more I realized the story was bigger than that. It's about community, resilience, adaptation. And what brings you to our particular corner of resilience?" "Honestly?" She smiled slightly. "I follow the stories. Sometimes they lead to unexpected places." Jack tightened a bolt, considering her words. "Like a small-town auto shop on a rainy night." "Exactly like that." Elena moved closer to the engine, her interest genuine. "You know, most mechanics I've met would have tried to upsell me on unnecessary repairs. But you're actually doing more than you quoted, aren't you?" Jack felt his ears, warm slightly. "There was some wear on the water pump. Better to replace it now than have it fail later. I'll only charge for the timing belt work we agreed on." "Integrity," Eleanor said softly. "That's another thing that's harder to find these days." Their eyes met over the engine, and something shifted in the air between them. More than just mutual respect or shared values, a recognition of kindred spirits, despite their apparently different worlds. The old album lay open on the workbench, its pages a testament to decades of stories, connections, and trust. As Jack resumed working, he realized they were creating their own chapter in that ongoing narrative, though neither of them yet knew exactly how it would unfold. The distinctive sound of metal striking metal echoed through the garage, followed by Jack's sharp intake of breath. Elena looked up from her laptop to see him examining a broken bolt with a mixture of concern and frustration. "Problem?" she asked, setting aside her work. "You could say that." Jack held up the sheared remnant of what had once been a mounting bolt. "This is from a custom bracket that helps support your modified electrical system, not exactly something I can grab off the shelf." Elena moved closer to examine the damage. "Can we work around it?" "Not safely. Not with all the specialized equipment you're running." He studied the broken piece. "This is aerospace-grade hardware. Probably came from the same place that did your suspension modifications." A flicker of worry crossed Elena's face. "How long to get a replacement?" "Regular bolt. I'd have it in an hour." "This?" Jack shook his head. "Best case. Special order from a performance shop in the city. 2 days minimum." Elena's careful composure slipped slightly. 2 days? Unless... Jack trailed off, lost in thought. Unless... He set down the broken bolt and wiped his hands. "There's a guy about 40 miles from here, Roy Watson, used to work at the auto plant before it closed, now runs a specialty machine shop. If anyone in the area could fabricate this, it'd be him." "Could you call him?" Jack checked his watch. "Nearly 10 p.m. "Not tonight, but first thing tomorrow. He owes me a favor." Elena nodded slowly, clearly recalculating plans in her head. "I suppose I'll need that motel recommendation after all. The Riverview's decent. Sarah's aunt owns it, actually." Jack reached for his phone. "Want me to call ahead?" "Please." Elena began gathering her equipment, then paused. "You said Roy worked at the auto plant?" 30 years. master machinist. When the plant closed, he turned his garage into a custom shop. Does high-end work now, but never left town. Jack's expression turned thoughtful. Actually, he might be. Someone you'd want to talk to for your documentary. He's seen both sides, the industrial decline and the way some people adapted to it. Elena's eyes lit up with professional interest. Would he be willing to be interviewed? Roy? Get him talking about machining or the old days at the plant. You'll have trouble getting him to stop. Jack smiled, then turned more serious. He's proud of what he does now. But the plant closing hit him hard, like it did most people. Here, I understand. Elena's voice was soft. Sometimes the most important stories are also the most difficult to tell. Jack finished his call to the motel, then began cleaning up his tools. I'll drive you over. Storm's getting worse. I can manage. Probably, he interrupted with a gentle smile. But Dad would haunt me if I let a customer walk 6 blocks in. This weather, Elena conceded with a grace that suggested she wasn't used to accepting help. As Jack locked up the shop, she took one last photograph, the broken bolt lying next to his tools, a small thing that would change the course of their story more than either realized. The rain had settled into a steady downpour as Jack's pickup truck navigated the quiet streets. Elena watched the town through her window, taking in the mix of empty storefronts and stubbornly surviving businesses. That's where the hardware store used to be, Jack pointed out as they passed a darkened building. And there, that was Thompson's diner, best apple pie in 3 counties. What happened? Same thing that happened everywhere else. The plant closed, people left, businesses couldn't survive on what was left. He turned onto River Street. Some adapted, like Roy. Some gave up. Others, he gestured to a lit storefront. They hold on, hoping things will turn around. Elena studied his profile in the dashboard lights. And which are you, Jack Miller? Pulled up to the motel before answering. I'm still figuring that out. The Riverview Motel was a well-maintained 2-story building from the 1960s. Despite its age, the property showed signs of care, fresh paint, neat landscaping, clean windows with cheerful curtains. I'll pick you up at 8 tomorrow, Jack offered. We can head out to Roy's place first thing. Elena gathered her overnight bag. Thank you, Jack, not just for the ride. All part of the service, he said lightly, but they both knew it was more than that. As he watched her disappear into the motel office, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that the broken bolt was more than just a random part failure. It felt like fate had thrown a wrench in the works, literally, keeping Elena in town just long enough for something important to unfold. Thunder rolled overhead as he drove home, his mind full of custom bolts, old photographs, and the mysteries still to be uncovered about his unusual customer. Morning light streamed through the windows of May's diner as Jack sipped his coffee, waiting for Sarah to finish her shift at the counter. The local newspaper lay open beside his cup, its headline catching his eye. Downtown Revitalization Plan sparks debate. Historic district at risk. Your mysterious customer checked in okay last night? Sarah asked, sliding into the booth across from him. Her aunt had called her first thing with the news of their late-night arrival. Elena? Yeah, she's... Jack paused, searching for the right words. She's different. Different how? Sarah's tone was carefully neutral, but her eyes were sharp with interest. Before Jack could answer, Mike bounded over, dropping into the seat beside Sarah. Are we talking about the woman with the tricked-out Jeep? Because Tom Bradley's been asking questions about her all morning. Jack frowned. What kind of questions? Where she's from? What she's doing here? Mike lowered his voice. He says she's been spotted taking pictures all over town. Some people are getting nervous. Sarah picked up the newspaper, pointing to a smaller article on page 3. Like this, maybe. Jack read the headline. Investigation into corporate land deals raises questions about development plans. His stomach tightened as he scanned the article. which detailed growing scrutiny of similar revitalization projects in other small towns. "You don't think she's connected to this, do you?" Sarah asked. "Would it be bad if she was?" Jack countered, surprising himself with his defensive tone. The diner's bell chimed, and Elena herself walked in, camera hanging casually at her side. The morning conversations dulled noticeably as locals took in her presence. She caught Jack's eye and smiled, but headed to the counter instead of joining them. "She carries herself like someone used to attention," Sarah observed quietly, "but tries not to draw it." Jack watched as Elena chatted easily with May, the diner's owner, who was already warming to her despite the usual small-town suspicion of outsiders. There was something genuine about Elena's interest in people that seemed to break down barriers. "I should get back to the shop," Jack said, standing. "Roy's expecting us at 10. "Us?" Sarah's eyebrow rose questioningly. "She's documenting industrial decline in small towns. Roy's story fits her project." Mike and Sarah exchanged looks that Jack pretended not to notice. Outside, the morning air was crisp with leftover rain. Elena fell into step beside Jack as they walked toward the shop, her camera occasionally rising to capture details most people would miss. The faded ghost sign on the hardware store wall, children's artwork in the empty storefront windows, an elderly couple helping each other navigate a broken sidewalk. "Your friends seem protective," Elena remarked. "Small towns. Should I be worried about Officer Bradley's interest?" Jack glanced at her. "You tell me." Elena lowered her camera, meeting his gaze directly. "I'm not here to cause trouble, Jack, but sometimes asking questions makes people uncomfortable, especially when the answers might challenge the status quo." They reached the shop, where Jack's pickup waited to take them to Roy's. As Elena climbed in, Jack noticed Tom Bradley's cruiser parked across the street, the officer pretending to check his phone. The drive to Roy's shop took them past the abandoned auto plant, its vast empty parking lot now cracked and overgrown. Elena's camera worked steadily, documenting the decay. "You know," Jack said as they turned onto the rural road leading to Roy's, "people here have reason to be suspicious of outsiders with cameras. Last time someone came around asking questions about development and progress, half the downtown ended up sold to a company that promised revitalization and delivered empty buildings. And what do you think I'm after?" "I think," Jack said slowly, "that you're after the truth. I'm just not sure what kind of truth you're looking for." Elena was quiet for a moment, watching the landscape roll by. Sometimes the truth isn't what anyone expects it to be. They pulled up to Roy's shop, a converted barn filled with precision machinery and decades of expertise. Through the open doors, they could see the old machinist bent over his lathe, crafting something with the same care he'd once given to auto plant components. "Ready to meet someone who chose adaptation over exodus?" Jack asked. Elena checked her camera settings, ready to learn how he made that choice. As they walked toward the shop, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that Elena's questions would stir up more than just memories. In a town this small, even whispers could start avalanches. Roy's workshop hummed with the precise whir of machinery, the smell of metal shavings and cutting oil filling the air. The old machinist's eyes lit up when he saw the broken bolt Jack handed him. "Now this is interesting," Roy said, holding it under his magnifying lamp. "Titanium alloy, custom threading, military spec, if I had to guess." Elena's camera captured his weathered hands as they examined the piece. "Can you replicate it?" "Honey, I can improve it." Roy's pride was evident. "Give me a couple hours." While Roy worked, he shared stories of the auto plant's glory days, Eleanor recording every word. Jack noticed how skillfully she guided the conversation, drawing out details about the community impact, the technical expertise lost, the human cost of industrial exodus. "Lot of knowledge walked out those gates," Roy said, making minute adjustments to his lathe. "Engineers, machinists, skilled laborers, all scattered to the winds, except some of us too stubborn to leave. Or too dedicated to the community," Elena suggested. Roy glanced up, his expression sharpening. You sound like you understand more than most reporters who come through here. I've seen it happen in towns across the country. But understanding isn't enough. These stories need to be told. Jack, who had been organizing Roy's cluttered toolbox, an old habit from childhood visits, noticed something fall from Elena's jacket pocket. A business card, landing face down on the oil-stained floor. He picked it up automatically, turning it over. His heart stopped. The card was heavy stock, letterpress printed. Elena Santos Brennan, Executive Director, Brennan Foundation for Economic Justice. The Brennan Foundation, one of the largest philanthropic organizations in the country, which made Elena. She must have seen his expression change. Jack? He held up the card. Found something of yours. Elena's careful composure cracked just for a moment. Real concern flashed across her face. I was going to tell you, she said quietly. When? After you got all your footage of the quaint local mechanic? The hurt in his voice surprised even him. Roy looked between them, understanding dawning. Brennan, as in Brennan Technologies, the company that's been buying up half the Rust Belt? It's not what you think, Elena started. Really? Jack's voice was tight. Because I think you're not just some documentary filmmaker. I think you're part of the same corporate world that's been treating towns like ours as disposable assets. Jack, the timing belt was actually bad, wasn't it? Or was that just a convenient way to get your story? The timing belt was genuine. Her voice was steady, but her eyes pleaded for understanding. Everything that's happened here has been genuine. Roy cleared his throat. Maybe I should give you folks a minute. No need. Jack set the business card on Roy's workbench. I need to get back to the shop anyway. Elena can wait for the bolt. Jack, please let me explain. But he was already walking out, his mind spinning. The Brennan Foundation had been in the news recently. Something about innovative approaches to economic development. He'd paid little attention, such things seeming far removed from his daily concerns. Elena caught up to him in the parking lot. You're right to be angry. Am I? Because I'm not even sure what I'm angry about. That you didn't tell me who you really are, or that I started to... He stopped himself. Started to what? Rain began to fall again, soft and steady. Jack looked at her, really looked at her, seeing both the woman he'd started to know and the powerful executive she really was. Why are you really here, Elena? Because sometimes the most important stories aren't in boardrooms or economic reports. They're in places like your shop, with people like you and Roy. She stepped closer. The foundation isn't like other corporate entities. We're trying to find ways to revitalize communities without destroying what makes them special. And what makes us special? Our quaint determination to keep dying businesses alive. Your integrity, she said firmly. Your connection to community. Your understanding that value isn't just about profit margins. Jack's hands stilled on the bolt. And you think I could help with that? I think you already are. She gestured around the shop. Everything you do here, maintaining vehicles, preserving history, training Mike, supporting your customers, it's exactly the kind of sustainable community development we're trying to encourage. The afternoon light slanted through the garage windows, highlighting the decades of history accumulated in every corner. Jack thought about his father's words. Every repair is a story, son. Make sure you're adding good chapters. Show me, he said finally. Show me everything you've documented. If we're going to talk about preservation and development, I need to understand exactly what story you're trying to tell. Elena's relief was visible. She reopened the laptop, and together they began watching the footage that would change not just their relationship, but potentially the future of towns like theirs across the country. In the background, the gentle ticking of the shop's old clock marked the moments of a new chapter beginning. As evening settled over the shop, Eleanor spread out her documentary treatment across Jack's father's old desk. The comprehensive document outlined a vision far bigger than anything Jack had imagined. The Brennan Foundation traditionally focused on large-scale economic development, Elena explained, turning pages filled with data, photographs, and detailed analyses. But we started noticing a pattern. The more we invested in big projects, shopping centers, industrial parks, corporate relocations, the more we lost the essential character of these communities. Jack studied a comparison chart showing economic metrics before and after traditional development projects. These numbers look good on paper. Exactly. On paper. Elena pointed to a different section of data. But look deeper. Small business closure rates, community engagement levels, local expertise retention, all trending downward, even as median income rises. She pulled out a series of photographs showing transformed downtown areas. Modern buildings stood where historic structures had been. Chain stores replaced family businesses. Parking lots covered former community spaces. Progress isn't always progress, Jack murmured, echoing his earlier words. That's what changed my perspective, Elena revealed. Another section of the treatment. I was raised in the corporate world. The Brennan name opened every door, but my mother, she came from a town like this. She never stopped telling me about the garage where her father worked, the way everyone knew each other, how the whole community pitched in when someone needed help. Jack watched her face as she spoke, seeing the passion behind her polished exterior. What happened to the garage? Demolished. The whole block was razed for a development project that never materialized. Her voice carried old pain. That's when I started questioning our foundation's approach. I convinced the board to let me explore alternatives, not just documenting what's being lost, but finding ways to preserve and enhance what makes these communities special. She turned to a new section titled Sustainable Community Integration. The pages detailed a radical departure from traditional development models. Instead of replacing existing businesses, we support them. Rather than building new facilities, we renovate historic structures. We invest in people who already understand their community's needs. She met Jack's eyes. People like you. Me. Jack gestured around the cluttered shop. I'm just trying to keep the lights on. You're maintaining more than just vehicles. This shop is a community hub, a repository of knowledge, a link between generations. Eleanor pulled out footage from her interviews around town. Listen to what people say about Miller's auto shop. The video played testimonials from various community members. Mrs. Peterson talking about how Jack helped her stay independent. A young father describing how the shop's payment plans made essential repairs possible. Mike enthusiastically explaining his apprenticeship. This is what sustainable community development looks like, Elena said. Not imposed from outside, but grown from within. Jack absorbed the implications. And the foundation would support this? More than support. Elena revealed the final section of her treatment. We want to create a network of businesses like yours across the country, share knowledge, resources, apprenticeship programs, preserve expertise that's being lost as skilled craftspeople retire, create opportunities for young people to learn trades in their own communities. The scope of her vision was both exciting and intimidating. It sounds almost too good to be true. It won't be easy, Elena admitted. We'll face skepticism from traditional developers, resistance from those who equate progress with demolition and replacement. The rain fell harder. Jack thought about his father's photo album, about Roy's dedication to his craft, about all the interconnected threads that made up a community's fabric. I need time to think, he said finally. Elena nodded, respect and regret mingling in her expression. I'll have Roy bring the bolt to your shop when it's ready. As Jack drove back alone, the business card seemed to burn in his pocket where he'd unconsciously placed it. The glossy cardstock represented a world so far removed from his own, yet Elena had moved through his world with genuine understanding and appreciation. He thought about the way she had handled his tools with respect, asked questions that mattered, seen value in things most people overlooked. Either she was a very good actress, or there was more to her story than a simple deception. The rain followed him back to town, where Sarah was waiting with concerned eyes and fresh coffee. But for once, he wasn't ready to share his troubles with his oldest friend. Some discoveries needed to be processed alone. The afternoon crawled by in a haze of routine repairs and distracted thoughts. Jack was underneath Mrs. Henderson's Volkswagen when he heard Elena's voice. "The footage from your shop. Would you like to see it?" He slid out from under the car, finding her standing in the garage doorway, laptop in hand. The completed bolt from Roy's shop sat on his workbench. She must have dropped it off earlier. "Why?" His voice was rougher than he intended. "Because it's not what you think." She moved into the shop, setting up her laptop on a clear space. "I've been documenting stories across the country, trying to understand what we're really losing. When communities like this break down." The screen came to life, showing footage from the previous night. Jack watched himself working on her Jeep, explaining the repair process. But it was more than just mechanical instruction. The camera had captured something deeper. "Watch how you handle each tool," Elena said softly. "The respect, the knowledge passed down through generations. Listen to how you talk about the history of each repair." The footage shifted to the moment with the photo album, capturing Jack's expression as he shared his family's legacy. The camera work was intimate, respectful, revealing the pride and passion he usually kept hidden. "This isn't poverty tourism or corporate reconnaissance," Elena continued. "This is about understanding the real value that places like Miller's Auto Shop bring to a community." Jack stood, wiping his hands. "And what does the mighty Brennan Foundation plan to do with this understanding?" "Change how we approach economic development." Elena met his eyes directly. "The foundation has resources, influence, but throwing money at problems without understanding the human element, it doesn't work. We've seen that fail too many times." "So, I'm your case study? Your evidence that the little people have value?" "No." Her voice sharpened. "You're the expert I needed to learn from. You understand something that most economic development theorists miss, that a community's strength isn't just in its GDP or employment statistics. It's in places like this, where knowledge is preserved, where relationships are maintained, where value means more than just dollars and cents." She moved to another clip, showing his interaction with Mrs. Peterson. "Look at how you handled her concerns. You didn't just fix her car, you preserved her independence, her dignity. That's not just mechanical skill, it's something we need to protect, to nurture." Jack watched the footage, seeing his shop through her lens. The careful organization of tools, the wall of family photos, the way every repair was documented and explained. She had captured the soul of the place, the intangible qualities that made it more than just another struggling business. "Why didn't you tell me who you were from the beginning?" Elena closed the laptop. "Because people change when they know. They show you what they think you want to see, tell you what they think you want to hear. I needed the truth." "And did you find it?" "I found more than I expected." Her voice softened. "I found someone who understands that preservation isn't just about keeping old things alive. It's about maintaining the connections that give those things meaning." Jack picked up the bolt Roy had made, examining its perfect craftsmanship. "And now what? You write your report, make your recommendations, and move on to the next town?" "That depends." "On what?" "On whether you're willing to be part of something bigger." Elena pulled out a folder, not her usual camera equipment, but official foundation documents. "We're developing a new approach to community revitalization. Not top-down corporate development, but support for existing businesses. Preservation of local expertise, investment in people who already understand what their communities need. But look at what Roy's doing with his machine shop, what you're doing here, proving that adaptation doesn't mean abandoning our roots." Jack picked up a photograph from her collection, a side-by-side comparison of his shop from his father's. Day and now, despite modernization, the essential character remained unchanged. "Why me?" he asked finally. "Out of all the businesses you've documented, what makes this place special?" Eleanor's answer came without hesitation. "Because you understand that every repair is more than just fixing what's broken. It's about maintaining connections, preserving knowledge, building trust. That's what we're trying to repair on a larger scale. The connections that hold communities together." The shop's old clock chimed 9, its familiar sound underlining the weight of the moment. Jack looked around at the space his family had, maintained for generations, seeing it now through new eyes, not just as a legacy to preserve, but as a model for future possibility. "If we did this," he said slowly, "I'd need guarantees, not just for my business, but for the community. No corporate takeover, no changing what makes this place special." Elena nodded, pulling out one final document. "That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. Because this isn't just about saving individual businesses, it's about redefining what progress really means." Outside, the streetlights flickered on, casting long shadows through the shop windows. Inside, two people from very different worlds, bent over old plans and new visions, beginning to write a new chapter in the story of American small-town life. The community petition appeared on Miller Auto Shop's counter early Monday morning. Sarah found it when she arrived, the crisp paper bearing dozens of signatures beneath bold text, "Preserve our town, stop corporate takeover." "You need to see this," she called to Jack, who was already elbow-deep in a transmission repair. He wiped his hands and took the document, recognizing names of long-time customers, business owners, and neighbors. The petition's language was clear. They'd heard about Elena's presence and feared the worst. "Word travels fast," Sarah said quietly. "Tom Bradley's wife works at the bank. She overheard Elena's name, did some research. And now everyone thinks we're being bought out." Jack's voice was tired. "Are we?" The question hung in the air as Mike burst through the door, his usual enthusiasm dampened. "You guys seen Main Street? Someone put up posters everywhere." Jack grabbed his jacket. "Watch the shop." Downtown was a sea of yellow flyers, each bearing the same message: "Don't let history repeat. Remember Valley Grove." Valley Grove, the next town over, had lost its historic district to a failed development project 3 years ago. Outside May's diner, a small crowd had gathered. Jack recognized Roy among them, his weathered face grave. "Jack." Roy nodded toward the diner. "Might want to see this." Inside, May herself stood behind the counter, tears in her eyes. She held out a letter. "Got this morning. They're not even trying to hide it anymore." The corporate letterhead was familiar. Jack had one just like it in his stack of bills. The bank was calling in loans, citing changing economic conditions and development opportunities. "They're squeezing us out," May said, her voice breaking. 30 years I've run this place. My mother ran it before me. Now they give me 90 days to either sell or pay up in full." Jack thought about Elena's documentary treatment, her vision of preservation and sustainable development. But looking at May's face, he understood why the town was scared. They'd heard promises before. The diner's bell chimed. Elena stood in the doorway, her camera hanging unused at her side. The conversation died as everyone turned to stare. "Ms. Santos Brennan," May said stiffly, "come to survey your new property?" "Actually," Elena replied, moving to the counter, "I came for your apple pie and to talk about why that letter is exactly what we're trying to prevent." She set her own document on the counter, a draft community protection agreement. "The Brennan Foundation isn't here to buy anyone out. We're here to help you keep what's yours." "Pretty words," someone muttered. "We've heard them before." "You have," Elena acknowledged. "That's why we're doing this differently." She turned to May. "May I show them?" May hesitated, then nodded. Elena opened her laptop, pulling up footage from her documentary, not just of their town, but of others where traditional development had destroyed community bonds. "This is Valley Grove 2 years ago," she said, playing a clip of empty storefronts and demolished buildings. "This is what happens when development ignores community values, but look at this." The footage shifted to successful revitalization projects, historic buildings restored, local businesses thriving with modern support, communities maintaining their character while adapting to change. The Foundation's new mission isn't about replacement, Elena explained. It's about preservation, support, and sustainable growth. "We don't want to buy you out. We want to help you thrive." "And we're supposed to trust you?" May asked, but her tone had softened slightly. "No," Jack said, surprising himself by speaking. "You're supposed to trust me." He picked up the petition, reading the names. "I know every person who signed this. They're not just customers, they're family, friends, the people who kept this shop alive when the plant closed." He met Elena's eyes briefly before continuing. "If the Foundation's plan was anything like Valley Grove, I wouldn't be standing here, but this is different. This is about protecting what matters." Roy stepped forward, pulling out his own paperwork, the specifications. For custom parts he machined for aerospace companies. "Been doing this since the plant closed. Adaptation doesn't mean surrender. Sometimes it means finding new ways to use old skills." The tension in the diner began to shift. People moved closer, asked questions, looked at Elena's documentation. With growing interest, rather than suspicion, May studied the Community Protection Agreement. "And this would guarantee our loans, keep the banks from pushing us out." "That's just the start," Elena said. "We want to create a network of businesses supporting each other, sharing resources, preserving skills and knowledge, like we used to," Roy added, "before everything got too big, too corporate." The petition still lay on the counter, its signatures a testament to community concern. But now it felt less like a protest and more like a foundation, proof that people cared enough to fight for their town's soul. "I'm not asking for blind trust," Elena told the crowd. "I'm asking for a chance to show you a different way forward, one that honors what you've built here while helping it grow stronger." Jack watched the faces around him, concerned, hopeful, skeptical, determined. The town story wasn't just in its buildings or businesses, but in these people who refused to let their community die. Outside, a worker began taking down the yellow flyers. The morning sun caught the faded letters on May's diner's window, "Serving our community since 1962. Some things, Jack realized, were worth more than any development deal could offer. Late that evening, after the crowd at May's had dispersed, Jack sat alone in his office, his father's original shop deed spread out before him. The yellow document, with its elaborate script and official seals, represented more than just property ownership. It was a contract between generations, a promise to maintain something valuable. The sound of footsteps made him look up. Elena stood in the doorway, her professional composure showing signs of wear after the day's confrontations. "Your father's deed?" she asked, recognizing the document. "Found it in the safe this morning. Been thinking about something he wrote on the back." Elena moved closer as Jack carefully turned the paper over. In faded ink, a single sentence. "The real value isn't in the building, but in what we build here." "He was right," Elena said softly. "Was he?" Jack ran a hand through his hair. "Because right now, I'm trying to figure out if I'm honoring his legacy or risking everything he built by even considering your proposal." Elena pulled up a chair, her movements careful, measured. "Tell me your concerns, all of them." Jack traced his father's handwriting. "What happens if this doesn't work? If your Foundation's new approach fails? These people, May, Roy, all of them, they're trusting me, my judgment. The Community Protection Agreement isn't just about legal guarantees." Jack stood, moving to the wall of family photos. "Look at these faces. 5 generations of Millers serving this community, each one adding something to what came before. What if working with your foundation means losing that independence, that personal connection? Eleanor was quiet for a moment, studying the photographs. Can I show you something? She reached into her bag, pulling out an old photograph of her own, a young girl in overalls, sitting on a mechanic's creeper beside an older man working under a car. My grandfather's garage, she explained, the one I told you about. This was taken 2 weeks before the development notice arrived. Her finger traced the edge of the photo. They didn't just tear down a building. They erased a place where people learned, connected, grew. Jack looked at the joy on young Elena's face, so similar to the expression he'd seen in photos of himself learning at his father's side. That's why I fought for this new approach, she continued. Because I understand what's at stake. It's not just about preserving buildings or businesses. It's about protecting spaces where community happens. She stood, moving to his desk where the deed lay. Your father was right. The real value is in what we build here. But we doesn't have to mean just the Miller family anymore. It can mean the whole community, supported by resources that help you do more of what you already do so well. Jack picked up his father's old ledger, its pages filled with careful notes about each repair, each customer, each story. And I'd still have control over how we operate, who we train, how we serve the community. That's the whole point. Elena's voice carried conviction. We want to support existing expertise, not replace it. Your knowledge, your relationships, your way of doing business, that's exactly what we're trying to preserve and strengthen. The shop's old clock ticked steadily, marking time as Jack wrestled with the biggest decision of his professional life. Through the office window he could see Mike closing up for the day, his movements echoing lessons Jack had taught him, just as Jack's father had once taught him. If we do this, he said finally, I want something in writing, not just the community protection agreement, but a guarantee about apprenticeships. Mike's not the only young person in town who needs a chance to learn a trade. Elena's eyes lit up. Actually, that fits perfectly with another part of our vision. We've been developing plans for a modern apprenticeship network, connecting experienced craftspeople with the next generation. She pulled out her laptop, quickly pulling up documents. See, we've already started pilot programs in other communities. Training stipends, certification support, business management education. As they pored over the plans, Jack felt something shift inside him. His father's words took on new meaning. What they built here could be bigger than one family's legacy. It could be a model for preserving not just buildings and businesses, but the knowledge, relationships, and values that made communities strong. The deed on his desk seemed to carry less weight now, its importance giving way to the possibilities spreading out before them. Sometimes, Jack realized, honoring a legacy meant helping it grow in ways the original builders never imagined. Okay, he said, surprising them both with the certainty in his voice. Let's do it. But we do it right. For May, for Roy, for Mike, for everyone who's trusted this shop to be more than just a business. Elena's smile carried understanding and relief. That's exactly why we need you, because you already know what matters most. Outside, the streetlights cast long shadows through the shop windows. But for the first time in years, those shadows didn't feel like omens of decline. They felt like bridges between past and future, between tradition and possibility. The business proposal took shape over the next few days, growing from scattered notes to a comprehensive document that lived on Jack's father's desk. Each morning, he and Elena would add new details, refine existing points, and weave together traditional values with innovative solutions. Look at this section, Elena said, highlighting a paragraph about technological integration. We can preserve your manual repair documentation while creating a digital system that makes it accessible to other shops in the network. Jack nodded, thinking of his father's meticulously maintained ledgers. As long as we keep the physical records too, there's something about putting pen to paper that helps you remember the details. Exactly. Eleanor typed a note. It's not about replacing the old ways, but enhancing them, making them more resilient. Their proposal centered around what they'd started calling the Heritage Skills Initiative. Miller's Auto Shop would become a pilot location for a new kind, a vocational education center, one that combined traditional apprenticeship with modern business practices. Sarah entered with coffee and fresh concern. Chamber of Commerce is asking questions. They want to know how this affects their downtown development plans. Perfect timing, Elena said, pulling out a draft presentation. We're meeting with them tomorrow. Jack, want to walk through your part? He studied the slides they'd prepared, each one showing how their vision could transform not just his shop, but the entire community. The old auto plant property would become a technical training campus, with Roy's machine shop providing specialized instruction. May's Diner would host a culinary apprenticeship program. Empty storefronts would house workshops and small business incubators. It's ambitious, Sarah commented, looking over their shoulders. It has to be, Jack replied. Anything less, and we're just putting band-aids on broken bones. Elena pulled up the financial projections. The foundation's investment covers infrastructure and initial training costs, but the key is sustainability. She pointed to a chart showing graduated support levels. As each business grows stronger, they help support newer members of the network. Like a mechanical chain reaction, Jack mused, thinking of the interconnected systems he worked with every day. Exactly. Every repair you make, every skill you teach, strengthens the whole community. The proposal included detailed plans for each participating business. Jack's shop would get updated equipment and expanded training space, but retain its character and independence. The foundation would provide resources, but decisions would remain local. What about resistance? Sarah asked. There's still plenty of skepticism out there. Jack reached for the photo album, now an integral part of their presentation. That's why we start with stories they know. Show them how what we're preserving leads to what we can become. Elena nodded, adding another note to their proposal. We're not asking them to trust a corporation. We're asking them to trust their neighbors who've already proven their commitment to the community. As if on cue, Mike burst in, his face flushed with excitement. You've got to see this. Roy's showing me how to program the CNC machine. He says with the new training program, I could get certified in digital fabrication while still learning traditional machining. The young man's enthusiasm was contagious. Jack watched him bounce back out to his training, remembering his own excitement, learning at his father's side. That's what we're really building here, he said quietly. Not just businesses or buildings, but bridges between generations. Elena touched his arm lightly. It's all connected. The skills, the stories, the relationships, they're what make a community worth preserving. They worked through the afternoon, refining their vision. The proposal grew stronger with each revision, balancing ambitious goals with practical steps. By evening, the document had become more than just a business plan. It was a blueprint for community resurrection. One more thing, Jack said as they were wrapping up. He pulled out a worn notebook, his father's handwriting filling its pages. Dad kept notes on every apprentice he ever trained, their strengths, learning styles, what motivated them. Think we could incorporate this kind of personal attention into the new program? Eleanor's eyes lit up. That's exactly the kind of institutional knowledge we need to preserve. The technical skills matter, but it's the human element. Understanding. How people learn and grow, that makes the difference. They added a new section to the proposal, preserving the human element, building on traditional mentorship methods. It detailed how modern training techniques could be enhanced by time-tested approaches to teaching and relationship building. Sarah, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke. You know what? I actually believe this could work. Jack looked at the proposal, seeing in its pages the future of not just his shop, but his entire community. A future that honored the past while embracing new possibilities. Tomorrow they would present it to the Chamber of Commerce, but tonight, in the quiet of his father's office, he felt the weight of generations lifting from his shoulders. The old shop clock chimed, its familiar sound now carrying notes of promise rather than pressure. Outside, the streetlights flickered on, illuminating a town on the cusp of transformation. The corporate takeover notice arrived just hours before their Chamber of Commerce presentation. It was addressed to every business in the historic district. The heavy bond paper bearing the letterhead of Valley Grove Development Corporation, the same company that had decimated the neighboring town. Jack found the notice on his windshield, identical copies plastered across downtown storefronts. His hands shook slightly as he read the carefully worded threat disguised as an opportunity. Notice of imminent domain proceedings and development rights acquisition. Significant economic benefit to the community. Fair market compensation. Required compliance with urban renewal ordinances. Elena's sharp intake of breath told him she'd seen it too. This isn't a coincidence. Someone leaked our proposal? Jack crumpled the notice, fury building. Worse. Eleanor was already on her phone, scrolling through messages. Valley Grove Development is a subsidiary of one of our foundation's main competitors. They're trying to shut us down before we can implement the new model. The morning sun cast long shadows across Main Street as business owners gathered in clusters, their faces drawn with worry. May stood in her diner doorway, clutching her own notice. Roy's truck screeched to a halt nearby. The old machinist's expression thunderous. "They can't do this," Roy growled, waving his copy. "We're private businesses. They can't just take our property." "They can, if they have the right political support," Elena said grimly. "And Valley Grove specializes in pushing through development rights using local government pressure." Inside Miller's auto shop, Sarah was already organizing an emergency meeting. The waiting room filled quickly. Shop owners, community leaders, concerned citizens. The Chamber of Commerce presentation forgotten in the face of immediate threat. "Look at the timing," Tom Bradley said, now in civilian clothes rather than his police uniform. "Right when we were starting to believe in this preservation plan, they're trying to force our hands." Elena set up her laptop, quickly pulling up research. Valley Grove's typical strategy: create panic, push for quick sales, promise development that never materializes. By the time the community realizes what's happening, it's too late. "They've done this before?" May asked. 17 communities in the past 5 years. Elena's fingers flew across the keyboard, bringing up news articles and development records. They use shell companies, complex legal structures, and political connections to push through hostile takeovers of historic districts. Jack studied the notice again, his mechanic's eye catching details others might miss. These urban renewal ordinances they mention. They don't exist yet, do they? "No," Elena confirmed, "but they're probably already working with someone on the city council to create them. It's their standard playbook." The room erupted in angry discussions, fear and frustration mixing with determination. Jack watched his community grappling with the threat, seeing in their faces the same spirit that had kept them going through the plant closure and economic downturns. "Listen," he said, his voice cutting through the chaos. "This notice isn't just about property. It's about everything we've built here, everything we're trying to preserve." He pulled out their proposal, now seeming both more urgent and more vulnerable. "We have a plan, a real plan, not empty promises, but we need to stand together." Elena stepped forward, her corporate polish replaced by fierce advocacy. "The Brennan Foundation is prepared to provide legal support, challenge any eminent domain proceedings, and fast-track our preservation funding." "And what's in it for you?" someone called out. "The same thing that's in it for all of us, proving there's a better way to revitalize communities than tearing them down and starting over." She met their skeptical gazes. "This isn't just about your town anymore. It's about setting a precedent." Jack spread out their proposal on May's largest table. "Look at what we've planned. Training programs, business support, real investment in people and places that matter. Are we really going to let some corporate raiders steal that future? Roy picked up the takeover notice, his weathered hands crushing the expensive paper. They think we'll panic, sell cheap, run away. He looked around the room. But they don't know this town. We didn't break when the plant closed. We won't break now. The mood began to shift, fear giving way to resolve. May started collecting signatures for a formal opposition. Tom Bradley made calls to his law enforcement contacts about Valley Grove's tactics in other communities. Sarah organized teams to document every historic property's condition and value. As the community mobilized, Jack caught Eleanor watching him with an unreadable expression. "What?" he asked. "I've seen a lot of communities face this kind of pressure," she said softly. "Most of them fold. But this place, there's something different here." Jack looked around at his neighbors planning resistance, sharing resources, standing together. Maybe because we've got something worth fighting for, something more than just property values. The takeover notice lay discarded on a table, its threats overshadowed by the energy of a community discovering its strength. Outside, Valley Grove's developers might be plotting their next moves, but inside Miller's auto shop, the real power of preservation was proving itself more resilient than any corporate strategy. The social media campaign started with a simple video, Jack in his shop, holding up his father's original ledger while Mike worked on a car in the background. Their story, captured by Elena's expert eye, quickly became something larger than themselves. "My family's been fixing cars in this town for 5 generations. Jack's voice carried quiet conviction. "But we do more than just repairs. We maintain connections, preserve knowledge, build community." The post spread rapidly, resonating far beyond their small town. Comments poured in from across the country, other communities facing similar struggles, people sharing memories of their own local mechanics, supporters rallying against corporate development tactics. "Look at this," Sarah said, showing Jack her phone. Their hashtag was "Preserve Not Destroy" was trending regionally. People are sharing their own Valley Grove stories. We're not alone. Elena had transformed Jack's office into a command center, coordinating with the Brennan Foundation's legal team while helping local businesses document their histories. May's ancient recipe book, Roy's craftsmanship portfolios, generations of receipts and thank you notes. Every piece of paper became evidence of community value. "It's not just about proving financial worth," Elena explained as they organized materials. "We're demonstrating cultural and historical significance. That matters in preservation cases." The shop's usual repair work continued, but now each interaction carried additional weight. Mrs. Peterson's regular oil change became a documented example of essential community service. Mike's training sessions were filmed as proof of ongoing skilled trades education. "People keep asking why I didn't sell when the plant closed," Roy told Elena's camera. "Same reason I'm not selling now. Some things are worth more than money. The skills I learned here, the skills I'm teaching, you can't just pack those up and move them to a shopping mall." Their social media presence grew, carefully managed to showcase the human side of preservation. Jack found himself learning new terms like engagement metrics and content strategy, but the core message remained authentically their own. Mike proved surprisingly adept at digital outreach. "Check this out," he said one afternoon, showing them a TikTok he'd created. It featured quick cuts of daily shop life, Jack teaching him diagnostic techniques, Sarah helping elderly customers understand their repairs, local kids pressing their faces against the window to watch the mechanics. "Work. That's got 50,000 views already," he announced proudly. "People really care about this stuff. They're tired of seeing everything unique get turned into chain stores." The campaign wasn't just digital. They organized community events, turning Miller's Auto Shop's parking lot into a gathering space. Roy brought his portable machining equipment for demonstrations. May served her famous pies. Local musicians played between presentations about historic preservation and economic justice. "This is what they can't replicate," Elena said, watching. "Families interact across generations. No corporate development can manufacture this kind of organic community connection." The highlight was their Heritage Skills Day, where local craftspeople demonstrated traditional trades. Jack found himself teaching basic automotive maintenance to a crowd of eager learners, his father's teaching methods flowing naturally into this new context. "See how the timing belt tells a story," he explained to his audience. "Every wear pattern, every frayed edge. It's like reading history. Understanding these signs helps us prevent problems before they become emergencies." Elena captured it all, weaving the footage into their growing narrative. The campaign gained attention from regional news outlets, preservationist groups, and other communities fighting similar battles. But it wasn't just about resistance. Their original proposal evolved, incorporating input from community members and lessons learned from their mobilization. The Heritage Skills Initiative expanded to include more trades, more connections, more ways to preserve and adapt local expertise. "Valley Grove thought they could divide us with fear," May told a reporter. "Instead, they reminded us of what we'd lose. Now we're stronger than ever." The social media metrics proved her right. Their campaign didn't just generate support. It sparked a larger conversation about community preservation and sustainable development. Each shared story, each preserved skill, each documented connection became part of a larger argument for their way of life. One evening, as they reviewed the day's analytics, Jack found Eleanor studying him with a thoughtful expression. "What?" he asked, still slightly uncomfortable with being the face of their movement. "You've changed," she said. "When I first arrived, you were trying to preserve something you thought was dying. Now, you're helping it grow." Jack looked around his shop, seeing it with new eyes. The old filing cabinets now held both paper records and digital archives. Mike's workbench had a tablet mounted next to traditional tools. Their heritage wasn't just being preserved, it was evolving, adapting, finding new ways to remain relevant. "Maybe that's the real story here," he replied. "Not just saving what matters, but helping it thrive." Outside, another community event was winding down. The sound of laughter and conversation drifted through the windows, a reminder that their campaign was about more than just buildings or businesses. It was about keeping alive the connections that made a place worth fighting for. The new partnership agreement arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning, its weight substantial in both pages and significance. Jack and Elena sat at his father's desk, the document between them representing months of work, struggle, and transformation. "Are you ready for this?" Elena asked, her usual corporate polish softened by genuine concern. Jack picked up his father's old fountain pen, the one used to sign the original shop deed. "Almost. There's something I want to show you first." He opened his laptop, pulling up a document he'd been working on privately. The title read, "Miller's Auto Shop, Community Integration Charter." "What's this?" Elena leaned forward, intrigued. "My terms, not legal ones. We have enough of those in the partnership agreement. These are my commitments to the community and what I expect from the foundation in return." The charter was handwritten first, then carefully typed, combining old and new just as their project did. Jack began reading. "First, knowledge belongs to the community. Every skill we preserve, every technique we teach, becomes part of our shared heritage. The Foundation's resources help us transmit this knowledge, but the wisdom itself belongs to the people who live it." Elena nodded, understanding immediately, like Roy's machining techniques. "Exactly. Second, progress doesn't mean abandoning tradition. It means building on it. Every modernization we implement must enhance, not replace, the human connections that make this place special. As Jack read through his charter, Elena's expression grew increasingly thoughtful. The document detailed not just preservation of physical spaces and technical skills, but the intangible elements that made the community strong. The way May remembered everyone's usual order, how Roy could tell a machine's health by its sound, the stories that turned routine repairs into connections between generations. "This is brilliant," Elena said when he finished. "It's exactly what the Foundation's new mission is about, but from the community's perspective. Would you mind if we used this as a template for other locations? That's why I wrote it." Jack smiled. "Figured if we're going to be a model for this new approach, we should define what that really means." They turned their attention to the partnership agreement. Its legal language formalized everything they'd fought for: protection for local businesses, support for the Heritage Skills Initiative, funding for apprenticeship programs, and safeguards against corporate takeover attempts. But more than that, it represented a new way forward. Valley Grove Development had withdrawn their threats after the Brennan Foundation's legal team exposed their tactics, and their social media campaign garnered national attention. Now, their town would serve as a pilot program for community-centered preservation and development. "It's not just about saving old buildings," Jack said as he signed. "It's about maintaining the spaces where community happens." Elena added her signature next to his, and proving that progress doesn't have to mean destruction. The agreement completed, they stepped out into the shop. Mike was teaching a group of high school students basic diagnostic techniques, his enthusiasm infectious. Sarah coordinated with other businesses through their new digital network, preserving relationships while expanding connections. Through the windows, they could see Roy demonstrating his craft to apprentices, his machine shop now a certified training center. May's Diner had become a culinary heritage site, her recipes documented and shared while remaining uniquely hers. "You know what this reminds me of?" Elena said, watching the activity. "That first night when you showed me your father's photo album, every repair telling a story, every interaction building community. Now we're just telling those stories to a larger audience," Jack agreed, "while making sure the next generation can write their own chapters." The partnership agreement sat on his father's desk, but it was the community integration charter that held pride of place on the wall. Its principles would guide not just their shop, but a growing network of communities, learning to preserve what mattered while adapting to change. Outside, a young woman pulled up in a car needing repair. As Jack went to help her, he caught Elena's smile. They both knew that this routine interaction was part of something larger now, another thread in the fabric of community they were helping to strengthen. The old shop clock ticked steadily, marking time not just for their business, but for a new approach to preservation, one that understood that the most valuable things to maintain weren't just buildings or machines, but the connections, knowledge, and stories that gave them meaning. The updated shop sign was unveiled on a crisp autumn morning, 6 months after the partnership agreement signing. The classic Miller's Auto Shop lettering remained, but beneath it, new text read, "Heritage Skills Training Center, Preserving Craft Building Community." Jack stood back, studying the way morning light caught the hand-painted letters. They'd commissioned Roy's nephew, a traditional sign painter, to do the work. The result perfectly captured their mission, honoring tradition while embracing growth. "What do you think your father would say?" Elena asked, standing beside him. Her visits had become regular as they implemented their program, though Jack suspected not all her reasons for returning were purely professional. "He'd probably say we're finally catching up to his vision," Jack replied, remembering his father's words on the back of the old deed. He always saw this place as more than just a repair shop. Inside, the transformation was even more evident. The waiting area now doubled as a small museum, displaying tools and photographs that told the story of automotive repair in their community. Glass cases held everything from antique wrenches to early diagnostic equipment, each piece labeled with its history and significance. But it wasn't just about the past. Modern diagnostic computers sat comfortably beside traditional tools, each workstation equipped for both old-school mechanical work and contemporary technology. Mike, now a certified instructor himself, moved easily between teaching computer-aided diagnostics and hands-on repair techniques. "Check this out," he called, waving them over to his teaching station. A group of students gathered around a hybrid engine, learning how traditional mechanical principles applied to new technology. "We're not just preserving old skills, we're showing how they evolve." The shop's documentation system reflected this blend of old and new. Digital records backed up the traditional ledgers, but they hadn't replaced them. Jack still maintained his father's practice of handwriting each repair's story, now supplemented by photos and videos that captured the learning process. "It's working better than we hoped," Elena said, watching the students work. "The foundations. Other pilot sites are seeing similar success, but this," she gestured around the shop, "this is special." She was right. The Heritage Skills Initiative had expanded beyond their initial plans. Roy's machine shop now hosted regular workshops, combining traditional craftsmanship with modern manufacturing techniques. May's Diner had become a gathering place for culinary preservation, with local cooks documenting and teaching heritage recipes. The old auto plant site, once a symbol of decline, was being transformed into an expanded training campus. Traditional trades were taught alongside modern skills, creating a bridge between past and future. Sarah managed their growing network of partner businesses, coordinating apprenticeships and sharing resources. The digital platform they developed allowed communities across the country to connect, share knowledge, and support each other's preservation efforts. "Remember when we thought we were just saving one shop?" Jack mused, watching the activity around them. Elena smiled, touching the museum display case. "We were never just saving a shop. We were preserving a way of life while helping it adapt." The evidence was everywhere. Local high school students now earned technical credits through their apprenticeship program. Older craftspeople found new purpose as instructors, their knowledge valued and documented. The community's economic health had improved, but more importantly, its spirit had strengthened. Mike's voice carried across the shop as he explained a complex repair to his students. "See how understanding the basic mechanics helps you diagnose modern systems. That's why we learn both. Everything builds on who came before." Jack watched his former apprentice teach, seeing his father's lessons living on in a new generation. The shop had become exactly what the Community Integration Charter had envisioned. A place where past and present worked together, where skills were preserved through active use, where community connections grew stronger through shared learning. The morning light streamed through windows, now labeled with historical dates and stories, creating shadows that danced across tools both old and new. Outside, the updated sign caught the sun, its traditional lettering and modern message perfectly balanced, just like the legacy they were building. "You know what the best part is?" Jack said, turning to Elena. "Every repair still tells a story. Now we're just adding more chapters, with more voices telling them." The shop hummed with activity, students learning, mechanics teaching, community members gathering. The old clock still ticked steadily on the wall, marking time not just for a business, but for a vision of preservation that had become a model for communities everywhere. What they'd preserved wasn't just a building or a business. It was the understanding that true progress doesn't erase history. It builds on it, adapts it, helps it grow into something even stronger than before. The final scene of Elena's documentary played on the shop's projection screen, installed where Jack's father's first business license once hung. The license itself now resided in the heritage display case, part of the living history they'd created. "Every community has a story," Elena's voiceover accompanied footage of daily life at Miller's auto shop. Some think progress means replacing these stories with new ones, but here they're proving that real progress means helping stories grow. The screening room, formerly the shop's storage area, was packed with community members. May dabbed at her eyes as footage showed her, teaching her mother's pie recipes to culinary students. Roy nodded approvingly at scenes of his machining classes, his expertise preserved in both digital archives and apprentices' hands. But it was the final sequence that caught everyone's attention. The camera panned across the shop's workstations, where mechanics of all ages worked side by side. It settled on Jack and Mike, teaching together, their easy rapport showing how mentorship evolved into partnership. The future isn't about choosing between preservation and progress, Elena's narration concluded. It's about understanding that the strongest communities build their future on the foundation of their past. As the credits rolled, applause filled the room. The documentary would air nationally next week, but this private screening was for the people who had lived the story, who were still living it. Jack stood, feeling slightly uncomfortable with public speaking, but knowing it was necessary. A year ago, when a mysterious Jeep rolled into our shop on a rainy night, I thought I was just fixing another timing belt. Gentle laughter rippled through the audience. Elena, standing near the back, smiled encouragingly. Instead, we ended up fixing something much bigger, not just preserving our community's legacy, but helping it grow stronger. He gestured to the gathered faces. Every person in this room is part of that story. Sarah stepped forward with Mike, unveiling their latest project, a digital archive accessible through a touchscreen display next to the heritage cases. We're calling it the Living Legacy Database, she explained. Every repair, every lesson, every community story, preserved and shared. The display showed categories ranging from technical repairs to oral histories. Video clips, photographs, and detailed notes captured not just procedures, but the wisdom behind them. Community members could add their own stories, creating a growing repository of local knowledge. But it's not just about looking back, Mike added, demonstrating how the system linked to their expanding network of heritage skills centers. We're connecting with communities across the country, sharing knowledge, preserving skills, building something bigger than ourselves. Roy spoke up from his seat. Never thought I'd say this, but sometimes the new ways make the old ways stronger. Jay nodded agreement. Like my online cooking classes, reaching people I never could before, but still keeping the personal touch that matters. The documentary's end marked not a conclusion, but a milestone in their ongoing journey. The Heritage Skills Initiative had expanded to 12 other communities, each adapting the model to preserve their own unique character while embracing positive change. As the crowd mingled after the screening, Jack found Elena studying the original, photo album that had helped spark their connection. "Having any second thoughts about that broken timing belt?" he asked. She looked up, her professional demeanor softening into something more personal, only that it didn't break sooner. Their relationship had evolved alongside the project, personal and professional lines blurring into something neither had expected, but both treasured. Like the community they'd helped strengthen, they'd found a way to preserve what mattered while allowing space for growth. Outside, the evening light caught the updated shop sign, its blend of traditional and new elements reflecting everything they'd achieved. Inside, the old clock still ticked, marking time for a business that had become so much more. A model for preservation, a center for learning, a place where community bonds grew stronger with each passing day. The documentary would share their story with the world, but the real story would continue here, in daily interactions, in skills passed down, in connections maintained and strengthened. Progress hadn't meant losing their past. It had meant building a future rich enough to hold both old and new, tradition and innovation, preservation and growth. As the last visitors departed, Jack and Elena stood in the transformed shop space. The familiar sense of oil and metal mingled. With new purposes, new possibilities, Tomorrow would bring more repairs, more students, more stories to add to their living legacy. Ready for the next chapter? Elena asked. Jack looked around at what they'd built together, not just preserved but enhanced. The shop hummed with the energy of a place fully alive, connecting past and future in ways his father might never have imagined but would surely have approved. Always, he replied, knowing that like every good repair, their story would continue evolving, growing stronger with each careful adjustment, each preserved connection, each new page added to their ongoing history.